The Outdoors just came out and with it brought 9 new entities, so today I did some digging and found out the backstory and secret lore of each one, starting with the Groundskeeper. The Groundskeeper is the main entity we see in the Outdoors and is neutral, only killing us if we step on the grass. This is because according to Gramps, if we touch the grass, the vines can take us over and can use us as a host, so killing us would be the easiest option for the Groundskeeper. From this, we can see that the Groundskeeper seems to have the purpose of keeping the vines at bay and away from the hotel, as implied by the cut vines at the entrance of the Outdoors, and also the fact he fights all of the vine-corrupted entities like the Eyestalk, Mandrake, and Brambles. It also seems like the Groundskeeper was employed to do this by curious light, as implied by him saying that he is just doing his job and that he's doing a good job. More proof of this is seen in his outhouse, which he uses to teleport, which is seemingly powered by curious light, as implied by the large star symbol on it. Even more proof of this is seen if we look at his eyes and aura, which are both yellow, implying that Curious empowers him in some kind of way, like how guiding empowers us. This would also explain why he's neutral. If he is connected to Curious, then he would follow after him and appear neutral to the player, only doing its purpose. We also know that it isn't meant to kill the player, because Curious literally says he didn't make it to do that, and that he isn't like the other entities which are made to kill us. But besides his purpose and connections to Curious, the Groundskeeper is also one of the strangest entities we've seen so far because he's intelligent, has confirmation that he was birthed as implied by Gramps, and actively cooks and eats his food, as we see a stupid monument being cooked over a campfire which Gramps asks us to eat with them for dinner. But there's one unfortunate fact about the Groundskeeper, and that's that the vines are actually starting to corrupt him, as we see the vines crawling up his body. We know that he wasn't born like this because Gramps is his relative and has no vines, implying these vines are recent, but because of Curious, he's somehow keeping the control at bay. But that's it for the Groundskeeper, so let's get into Gramps.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa!
That's too bad!
Now, because Gramps' name implies that he is a grandpa, that implies one of two things. One, Gramps is the grandpa of the Groundskeeper, and the Groundskeeper's parents somehow died or were corrupted, possibly to the vines. Or two, Gramps is the dad of the Groundskeeper, and the Groundskeeper has some sort of son, which would explain the drawings in the cabins. Unless, of course, the Groundskeeper is drawing these or drew these as a kid. But besides his name, we see that his skin and eyes are very similar to Jeff's, possibly implying a connection between the two in some kind of way, which we might see in a later floor. Past this, we also see that if we bring Gramps 8 lotus petals, then he can make a lotus, an item that can respawn us where we place it down if we die. Now, what interests me about this is how does he know what a lotus is? I mean, I know the World Lotus is near his house, but how did he ever understand how to make that? My best theory on this is either 1, he copied the design of the World Lotus, or 2, whoever Grandma has taught him from family tradition or guiding light or something. But that's it for Gramps. So let's get into some of the smaller entities. First, we have the Mandrake. The Mandrake is a type of plant from mythology, which screams when you pluck it, which will cause you to have a heart attack. Indoors, mandrakes are seen everywhere, being the small leaves we see coming out of the ground. It is implied that these are planted by the Groundskeeper somehow like the flowers, and won't cause any harm unless plucked, which we are unable to do. However, the mandrakes that attack us indoors are controlled by the vines which pluck them out of the ground and put them near us, making our only options to kill it being to put it back in its hole, running away from them, or letting the Groundskeeper kill it. What's strange also about the mandrakes is that Curious doesn't seem to know what they are either, implying that these mandrakes might be new creations from Gramps, the Groundskeeper, or possibly the World Lotus. But that's it for the mandrakes, so let's get into the Caws. The Caws are just crows, but with bigger eyes like Louie, and are all over the Outdoors. They are easily startled by noise and will run away if anything gets near them. However, if we feed them bread, we can get an achievement and they will actually eat it, just further confirming they're organic. But that's it for the Caws, so let's get into Surge. Surge is the Outdoors version of Rush, appearing a few seconds after a yellow lightning strike, following it with a large boom and many yellow lightning strikes spawning Surge. Surge, unlike Rush, bounces around a certain area trying to find the player and can be countered by going into a closet, cabin, or safe hiding space. Surge is a scribbly PNG like A120 and emits a yellow light. Unlike Rush, who attacks after we enter a door, Surge just spawns in every few minutes in the Outdoors because the Outdoors goes by meters and not doors. But that's it for Surge, so let's get into the monument.
I died. over 100 million times.
The monuments are a mix between organic and stone structures. They seem to be a type of carnivorous animal like dupe that has adapted to the outdoors, using the stone monoliths as structures to mimic and slowly creep up on the player using a weeping angel mechanic. These monoliths are eaten by the groundskeeper as we see one being cooked on a fire at his base. These monoliths, when in a place for too long, seemingly get corrupted by the vines as implied by this secret cutscene where we see a monolith fighting the vines which are damaging it, showing that the vines are truly trying to corrupt anything they can. But before we get into the Eyestalk, make sure to comment, "I hate monuments" if you've made it this far, because they are seriously the worst entity indoors. But that's it for the monolith, so let's get into the Eyestalk. Eyestalk is this subfloor's version of Seek, which chases us down throughout the outdoors and is eventually stopped and killed by the groundskeeper, who even shows respect for us after we survive it. According to Curious, the Eyestalk is a very unoriginal copy of Seek from the World Lotus, implying that the World Lotus somehow saw how Seek chased us in the hotel, possibly through the windows. Now, although Eyestalk might seem like a gag at first, it actually might show us how the World Lotus thinks with it, first making a very weak and bare-bones copy of Seek with the Bramble being a much better and refined copy, seemingly learning more and more with each failure. But that's it for the Eyestalk, so let's get into my favorite entity, the Brambles. The Bramble, according to Curious Light, is not actually an entity, but the World Lotus making vines that copy the function of multiple entities. The Bramble is a bundle of vines from the World Lotus that have taken over a lamppost, acting as a sort of reverse eyes. When you look at Brambles while the lamplight is on, he can damage you from a far distance, and if you get close, he will kill you similar to the figure with his spotlight, which might even possibly be the reason why the World Lotus chose a lamppost, because it was copying the figure. It seems like the World Lotus made Bramble to protect itself against the groundskeeper, which seemingly was trying to kill it as implied by the traps he set around the World Lotus's vines. This would explain why it tries to attack the groundskeeper, and also why it was made so strong compared to the other entities. Curious Light says that it copies entities, implying that because the World Lotus couldn't corrupt the groundskeeper, so it copied its movements like how it did to Seek, and used them to make Bramble, explaining its walking patterns and tendencies to teleport between lanterns similar to how the groundskeeper does in the outdoors. It would also explain the ending of the outdoors with Bramble fighting the groundskeeper in the same style that it moves, showing its copying abilities. But past the groundskeeper, it seems like the World Lotus also is learning from its mistakes with the Eyestalk, and is partially copying Seek's goo mechanics, as we see that the vines seemingly can allow Bramble to appear anywhere similar to Seek's black goo, combining the figure, groundskeeper, and Seek's abilities into one entity. This implies that the World Lotus can actually see through its vines, as implied by it somehow knowing what Seek and the figure is, possibly implying us fighting it in a later floor. But that's it for Bramble, so let's finally get into the World Lotus. Now, the World Lotus is the strangest entity we've ever seen indoors. It seems to be inspired by the World Tree, a tree in Norse mythology that connects the heavens in the leaves, the earth in the stem, and HE double hockey sticks in the roots. But unlike the World Tree, the World Lotus somehow gains some kind of intelligence despite it literally just being an anchor, and is using its vines to spread its control over the outdoors. We see that it is even trying to reach inside the hotel and mines, but Guiding Light and the groundskeeper stop it before it gets too far. We also know that apparently Curious Light is observing the World Lotus more than any other entity because of its ability to corrupt entities like how Seek can, but instead of corrupting the living, it corrupts the dead, killing its victims first. But past that, the rest I could say about the World Lotus is just theories, so I'll leave that for another video. But what's your guys' favorite entity? Make sure to like and subscribe and watch this.